three triplets had no father until they met him at their mother's grave.
Hello everyone. Enjoy these relaxing moments while you watch.
The sky was overcast, wind howling as it swept dust and sand through rows of cold tombstones. In the midst of that bleak scene, three children stood silently by a freshly covered grave, with no one else present but an old, frail cemetery keeper watching quietly from a distance. Amelia, Clara, and Paul, 13-year-old triplets, had just lost their mother 3 days ago to metastatic cancer. No relatives, no family friends, no one came to the funeral besides Mr. Matthew, the cemetery keeper, who was the only person helping them take care of the arrangements. The dark wooden coffin had been lowered into the damp earth early that morning. Now, only a mound of uneven soil remained, with a hastily carved headstone bearing their mother's name, Laura Ferguson, 1978 to 2025. "We really don't have anyone left now," Clara whispered, her voice tight with grief. Amelia burst into tears, trying to hold them back but failing. "Mom said she'd try to live until our birthday." Paul didn't turn around. His voice cut through the air, cold as the wind. "Mom is dead. And Dad never existed." His words sliced deep into the hearts of the two girls. Since they were little, their mother had always avoided questions about their father. The only thing she ever said was, "He died a long time ago." But there was no photo, no grave, not a single detail about him. Every time they asked, she would turn away, her eyes trembling with something unsaid. Mr. Matthew approached slowly, holding a worn felt hat in his hands. His steps were deliberate, quiet. He looked at the three children as though seeing a reflection of his younger self, an orphan, cold and alone in the world. "You kids should head home," he said gently. "It's about to rain." "Sir, did you know our mom?" Clara asked, her voice raspy. Mr. Matthew nodded, his cloudy eyes filled with sorrow. "Yes. She used to come here on Thursday afternoons. Quiet. She'd sit for hours in front of another woman's grave, never said a word. I've never seen anyone cry so silently." Amelia sobbed. "Mom was sick for years, but she never complained. She only worried about us being hungry, or falling behind in school, or being picked on." Mr. Matthew stood in silence. He reached out and gently stroked the headstone, as if saying a final goodbye. "Your mother was a brave woman. A true mother." Clara bowed her head. "Sir, no one came to see her off, did they?" Mr. Matthew hesitated. "No, no one did." Amelia collapsed to the ground, burying her face in her hands. "No one. No one came. She lived her whole life for others, and when she died, it was just the three of us." The wind picked up. A dry branch broke off and fell near the grave. Paul walked over, picked it up, then slammed it to the ground and dropped to his knees. He didn't cry, just shouted into the wind, again and again, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't get to. I didn't do anything for you." The three children fell silent. Only the sound of the wind remained, howling through the cemetery, sand scraping against the stone like knives. A deep sorrow surrounded their small, fragile souls, motherless, fatherless, and abandoned by the world. Mr. Matthew stood behind them, gripping his hat tightly. "Do you kids have a place to go?" Paul answered coldly, "We live in apartment 43, St. Jerome Housing. Ground floor. The one with leaks and rats everywhere." Mr. Matthew looked at them, heart heavy. He'd overseen thousands of funerals, but had never seen children so utterly alone at their mother's grave. No family arms to hold them, no fresh flowers, no priest, no final words. Just a death that passed as though it never mattered. "Are you still in school?" he asked. Amelia nodded faintly. "We are, but we're about to be kicked out. We haven't paid tuition. And the kids, they hate us." Clara lifted her tear-streaked face. "They call us bastards. Because we don't have a dad." Mr. Matthew pressed his lips together. He wanted to say something, but only sighed. Don't let their words hurt you. You didn't do anything wrong. Clara shook her head. We didn't. But no one believes that. The wind roared louder. The first drops of rain began to fall, chilling Amelia's dark hair. Still, the children didn't want to leave. Clara pulled an old ribbon from her pocket, tied it to a branch by the grave, and whispered, "We'll come back. Every week. Like Mom used to." Mr. Matthew placed a hand on Clara's shoulder. "If you ever need anything, just call my name. I'm always here." Paul looked up at him, eyes red but defiant. "If you knew who our dad was, would you tell us?" Mr. Matthew froze, then shook his head. "I don't know. I never saw anyone come looking for her. Just her. Always alone." The rain grew heavier. Cold drops whipped against their faces, but the children stayed still. Their breath fogged in the air. Clara was the first to turn away. "Let's go. Mom wouldn't want us catching a cold." Amelia clung to her sister's coat. Paul followed last, not looking back until they reached the cemetery gate. There, he suddenly turned, stared at the grave one last time, and whispered. "Mom. I swear I'll find the truth. Even if I have to search the ends of the earth." St. Jerome housing sat tucked among dirty, worn-out streets in the north side of Washington. The children's apartment was on the ground floor, damp and dark, where leaking water could always be heard behind the walls. Every morning, dim sunlight crept through a window no bigger than a hand, barred by rusty metal, casting its pale glow on peeling, moldy walls. In the single room they shared, a rickety wooden table stood. The three of them split a leftover crust of hard bread from the day before. No milk. No hot water. The electric kettle had been broken since last week. Amelia was still curled up under a blanket, shivering from a mild fever last night, while Paul had already prepared his things to go to work before dawn. "Where are you going?" Clara asked, seeing him pull on a worn-out coat and knit hat. "To the bus station. Mr. Lewis hires people to carry water. $2 per jug." Clara sighed. "You've got a geometry test today." Paul turned away, his voice bitter. "You think a test is going to get us through this week?" The room went silent. Amelia curled up tighter in the corner, murmuring, "I'm hungry." Clara dug into her pocket and pulled out their last few coins, then stood up. "I'll go to Mrs. Rose's store. Wait for me." She threw on her faded jacket, wrapped a scarf around her neck, and headed for the door. The hallway was full of trash, the musty smell hitting her like a wall. TV noise echoed from an upstairs apartment, mixed with shouting and swearing. As soon as she stepped outside, Clara saw 3 neighborhood kids loitering near the wall. One of them, Martin, smirked. "Out begging again, Clara?" She didn't answer, just kept her head down and walked past. But they wouldn't let it go. "The little bastard's going shopping. Bet that imaginary daddy of hers gave her some cash," the red-haired girl laughed cruelly. Clara spun around, eyes burning. "I'm not begging. Leave me alone." "A bastard with pride? Your mom was just a maid for rich folks," another one shouted. Clara clenched her fists but didn't fight. Their words stung. They weren't true, but the kids had no idea. She rushed to the corner store. Mrs. Rose, a middle-aged woman with silver hair tied in a bun, was wiping the counter. She didn't look up when Clara entered. I want to buy some cheese." "The cheapest kind," Clara said, placing 2 coins on the counter. Mrs. Rose frowned. "That's only enough for a tiny piece. And don't forget you still owe me from last time." "I'll pay, next week." "I promise," Clara mumbled. "You always promise," the woman snapped. "Your mother kept her word when she was alive. You just drag that debt longer and longer." Clara lowered her head and took the tiny piece of cheese. No thanks, no goodbye, just walked out silently. Her thin frame was visible beneath the flimsy jacket in the biting cold. Back home, she found Amelia still wrapped in blankets, trembling. Paul had left. Clara sat down and broke the cheese into 3 even pieces. Amelia took a small bite, then stopped, tears falling from her eyes. "You eat it. I'm not hungry anymore." Clara shook her head. "You have to eat to take your medicine." Amelia let out a quiet sigh. "I wish Mom were still alive." Clara turned her face away, eyes red. But she refused to cry in front of her sister. By evening, Paul returned, his hands scraped and his clothes soaking wet. He dropped $3 on the table, his face expressionless. "That's all you made?" Clara asked. "Not many people needed help today. Someone else took the job. You should try working at Mrs. Rose's store tomorrow." "They need help," Clara suggested. "She hates us," Paul muttered. "Let her hate us. We need the money." Amelia sat on the floor, her gaze empty. "My classmate said again today, that the reason we don't have a dad is because Mom was a whore." Paul slammed his hand on the table. "Enough." "Who said that?" "Lucy. And the others." Clara trembled. "They don't know anything. Mom wasn't like that." Paul jumped to his feet. "Stop defending her. If she hadn't hidden the truth about our father, we wouldn't be humiliated like this." Clara slapped him across the face. The room froze. It was the first time Clara had ever hit her brother. "You can't talk about Mom like that," Clara shouted, tears streaming down her face. "She endured her whole life raising us, on her own. You think it was easy?" Amelia burst into tears, and Paul turned away in silence. A heavy stillness filled the dark room. That night, the electricity flickered, then went out completely. The 3 of them sat in the dark, using candles to cast a dim light over their homework notebooks. Each sat in their own corner. Clara was writing when she suddenly broke down sobbing. She couldn't take it anymore. "Mom, why didn't you tell me who our father was? Why did you stay silent and die like that? Why did you leave us alone in this cruel world?" No one answered. Only the howling wind outside the window, and the long, drawn-out sighs of the night. The next day at school, the 3 walked into class under glaring, judgmental stares. Their homeroom teacher, Mr. Ernest, tapped his ruler on the desk, coldly. "Amelia, Clara, Paul, you're late. And this is the 3rd time this month." "Sir, the bus didn't stop at our station today," Clara quickly explained. "There is no excuse for a lack of discipline. Do you think you're special? Because you lost your mother?" "We don't think that," Amelia whispered. Mr. Ernest frowned. "I've said it before, personal circumstances are no excuse. If it happens again, I'll forward your records to the principal." The class giggled. Lucy, the girl who often bullied Amelia, whispered to her friends, "Those bastards think they're princesses or something." Clara turned back, her eyes burning like fire. But she didn't say a word. She just held her sister's hand tightly. Paul sat beside them, his fingernails digging deep into the desk, silent. But if someone looked closely, they would see his arm trembling. That afternoon, the children walked home in silence under the rain. No one spoke. By the time they reached the house, it was already dusk. Clara searched her pockets for the key when an old envelope fell from the bookshelf near the door. She bent down to pick it up. It was a crumpled piece of paper with no return address, just their mother's scrawled handwriting, "Do not open while I'm still alive." The 3 children looked at each other. "Open it," Paul said in a low voice. "What are you waiting for?" Clara clutched the envelope tightly. The paper was old and yellowed, like it had been there for years. A strange feeling swelled inside her, half fear, half hope. Amelia and Paul stood silently beside her, their eyes fixed on the letter as if it were a portal to a ghostly past they'd never dared to face. "Go on, open it," Amelia whispered. Clara took a deep breath. Her hands trembled as she tore the envelope open. Inside was a handwritten letter, filling both sides, in the soft cursive she knew so well, the same handwriting she'd seen on tuition notes, fridge reminders, and the family calendar that read, "Don't forget your medicine. Love you." But this time, the handwriting trembled, smudged as if tears had fallen on the paper. "My beloved children. If you're reading this, I'm probably no longer with you. I'm sorry for not being strong enough to stay longer. But I tried. I tried every day, every night, just to see you grow, go to school, smile, even a little was enough to keep me going. You always asked me, 'Who is our Father?' And I always avoided it, always lied. Because I was scared. Because I was a coward. Because I didn't know any other way to protect you from a cruel truth." Clara swallowed hard, her voice catching. "Mom, you knew we'd find it." Paul took the letter from her, continuing to read, his eyes never leaving the page. "Your father's name is Charles Ramsey. He's not dead. He's still alive, still wealthy, still appearing on television spouting moral nonsense. He's a famous businessman, founder of Ramsey Real Estate Group. And he is also the man who raped your mother when I worked as a housemaid in his home. I was 22 years old." The air froze in the room. Amelia broke down crying, while Clara was so shocked she couldn't breathe. "No, no way. Mom," she whispered. Paul gripped the letter tighter, his voice like ice. "His wife was out of town. I stayed behind to clean, to do laundry. That night, he was drunk. He laughed. He said, 'What did you come here for? Trying to seduce me? Don't play innocent with me.' I fought back, I cried, but he was stronger. And when I screamed, he threatened, 'If you open your mouth, I'll make you disappear and no one will ever know.' I planned to go to the police. But the next morning, I was fired immediately. No one believed me. They called me a dirty maid and said I was trying to trap the boss. I went everywhere, and everyone turned their back on me." Paul let the letter fall from his hands, his face pale as a sheet. Amelia sobbed, "Mom, she endured it all alone, just to keep us." Clara said nothing. She bent over the table, her shoulders shaking like someone who had been beaten to the core. This truth had struck like a storm, washing away what little hope remained. After a long pause, she looked up, wiped her tears, and read the final lines. "I once returned to that house, stood at the gate, holding hospital records, ultrasound photos. I wanted him to see you. But he just smirked and said, 'Looking for money? You think you're worth anything?' I once thought about dying. But every time I saw your little sleeping faces, I told myself, I can't fall. I lived for you. Not for him. Not for justice. Just for you. If one day you want to find him, remember, you have the right. But you can also choose to forgive. Whatever happens, you are the most beautiful part of my life. Love you forever. Mom, Laura." The letter fell from Clara's hand. She covered her mouth, sobbing. Amelia rested her head on her sister's shoulder. Paul remained still, eyes bloodshot. His fists clenched so tightly that his nails pierced the skin, drawing blood. She kept that inside for 13 years. No one knew, Clara whispered in disbelief. Paul suddenly shouted, "That bastard is still out there living happily. On TV, running his company, with a new wife and 2 kids, and Mom died in pain like that." "Paul," Amelia tugged at her brother's arm, pleading. "Mom wouldn't want you to be angry." "Shut up." Paul screamed. "Mom forgave too much. But I won't. I want the whole world to know what he really is." Clara stepped forward, gripping his arm tightly. "You can't act recklessly. If you go public with this, they'll say we're making it up." They'll say Mom was a lowlife looking for money. Then what? Stay quiet like Mom. Keep living in the shadows like rats in the walls. Paul yelled at his sister. A hoarse voice came from outside the window, "Are you kids all right?" All three of them jumped. It was Mr. Julian, the elderly neighbor, standing at the window with his cane, concern in his eyes. We're okay," Clara stammered, wiping her tears. He saw the letter on the floor and said softly, "I heard everything. I'm sorry for eavesdropping, but Laura was the bravest woman I've ever known. I remember one night she cried until dawn. She told me, I don't need anyone to believe me. I just need my kids to live." Amelia hugged the letter tightly. "You knew something, didn't you?" Mr. Julian sighed. "Not clearly. But I always sensed she carried a pain no one could touch. Even when her hair started falling out from chemo, she still got up at 5 to cook porridge for you. I once asked her, 'Laura, why don't you ask someone for help?' She smiled with tearful eyes and said, 'Because I'm used to doing things alone.'" Clara collapsed to the floor, crying. "What should I do now?" He stepped forward and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Let your tears fall first. Then think. But remember this, don't let anger burn your future. Let your pain lead you to truth and justice." Paul murmured, "I don't want justice. I want him to hurt the way Mom hurt." Clara grabbed his shoulder. "And do you think Mom would be proud if you turned into someone like him?" The room fell silent again. Amelia spoke, her voice soft as the wind. "What if we go to the cemetery? Tell Mom that we know the truth." Clara nodded. "Yes. She deserves to know that we're no longer in the dark." Paul said nothing. But when he stood up, he slipped the letter into his jacket pocket, his face as hard as stone. "Mom," he whispered, "I swear. I won't let him live in peace." Charles Ramsey sat in the spacious office on the 18th floor of the Ramsey Tower, in the new financial district of Washington. The transparent glass walls opened to a dazzling view of the city, where skyscrapers and neon billboards lit up day and night. His office lacked nothing from rare Bordeaux wine and a Mont Blanc pen collection to a massive portrait of Charles smiling and shaking hands with the city's mayor during a groundbreaking ceremony for a new residential complex. "You really are the perfect role model, Charles," came the voice of Martha, a well-known regional news anchor, as she wrapped up the interview. "Oh, thank you, Martha," Charles smiled, leaning back in his chair. "I just try to play my role as a good father and a responsible leader. Nothing special." Martha nodded, turning off her recorder. "Your son studies at St. Teresa International School, right?" "Yes. James is doing great. And little Emma is about to start first grade." Charles smiled, his eyes sparkling as if describing the perfect family. But the moment the door closed behind the reporter, that smile vanished. Charles stood up, walked to the minibar, and poured himself a glass of whiskey. His gaze settled on the family photo on his desk, his wife Julia, and their two golden-haired children, all dressed in white during a vacation in the Maldives. No one, not even Julia, knew about Charles's past before meeting her. No one knew about the woman named Laura. And certainly, no one knew the extent of his cruelty to silence that past. Laura had returned to the Ramsey estate many times, always standing outside the gate with 3 infants in her arms. She never cried, never screamed. She simply looked up at the second-floor window where, years ago, she had been shoved onto a bed, her mouth covered with a cloth, her life shattered in a matter of minutes. That day, the housekeeper came out and shook her head. "Mrs. Julia is home. You should leave. The master doesn't see strangers." Laura tried to hand over an ultrasound printout. "I'm not here to ask for anything. I just want him to acknowledge, just look at the children once." But the iron gate slammed shut. As cold as his heart. After that, she never returned. All she had left were her 3 children and a haunting threat. "If you open your mouth, neither you nor those kids will survive. Don't forget I can make people disappear without a trace. Charles Ramsay was born into a wealthy family, sent to study in England from a young age, and returned to the United States to inherit his father's real estate empire. He knew exactly how the machinery of silent power worked, how to conceal, manipulate, and destroy anything that threatened his reputation. To the public, he was the epitome of success. Each year, Charles sponsored scholarships for underprivileged children, led campaigns for affordable housing projects that masked shady land deals. When asked about his personal life, Charles would smile warmly, "Family means everything to me. Nothing beats dinner with my wife and kids." Only Laura's diary, hidden in a secret box, dared to tell the truth the media would never touch. Today I saw him on TV. He was shaking hands with the Pope, giving a speech about morality. I wanted to vomit. I felt sick that I ever begged him. That I was ever so scared I couldn't lift my head. But I have 3 children. I have to live. Sometimes I dream of him coming to our house and taking my kids away. I can't sleep after that. I lock myself in the bathroom and bite my hand so I don't scream. My kids ask who their father is. I lie. I say he's dead. I wish that were true. One afternoon, Clara, holding the letter, went to the public library to search for information about Charles. She printed out articles, images, videos. He was everywhere at conferences, award shows, charity events. He was hailed as Businessman of the Year, a true inspiration. Every time Clara saw his smile, her chest tightened. Paul walked in, gripping a stack of documents. Look. Company records. He's got 5 offices in Austin, for major projects in Miami and Los Angeles. Assets over $40 million. And us, Clara whispered, we don't even have a water heater. It's not just about being poor, Paul emphasized. It's that Mom died while he lived like a king. Her honor was trampled while he was praised. Amelia sat beside them, trembling. I'm scared. If we confront him, what if he does something to us? Paul hissed through his teeth, he can only threaten us if we stay silent. But if we expose him, who will believe us? Clara asked. 3 orphans' words against a public figure. Paul slammed the table, we have Mom's letter. Her diary. Evidence. If I have to, I'll go to his office and read it aloud in the lobby. And get dragged out like a lunatic. Clara countered. Paul, this isn't a movie. He won't collapse because of a few pages. Amelia sniffled. Maybe Mom was right. She said don't be consumed by hatred. That we should live differently from him. Isn't living kindly enough? Paul turned to his sister, eyes red. You might forgive him. But I won't. At that moment, in Charles's office, Julia entered, her face pale. Charles. I got an anonymous letter. It had a photo of you with a woman. It's old, but your face is clear. Charles's heart skipped. Where? Let me see it. Julia handed him a faded photo. In it, a younger Charles sat on a sofa, his hand on the shoulder of a brunette woman Laura. Charles turned ghostly pale. He clenched the photo, crushed it in his fist, and tossed it into the trash. It's old news. She used to be a maid. Then, some misunderstanding. I paid her to go away. Julia looked at her husband, tears in her eyes. Did you have a child with her? Charles turned away. No. That never happened. But in his mind, the image of Laura standing at the gate years ago resurfaced like a haunting spirit. And for the first time in over a decade, Charles felt a chill down his spine. That night, the 3 children sat by the window of their cramped room. Rain tapped on the tin roof. Clara stared outside. Do you think he'll ever feel fear? Paul didn't answer. His hand rested on their mother's diary, gently brushing the pages as if touching her soul. "Amelia," he whispered, "remember. Mom died in pain. And as long as we live, we can't let that pain be meaningless." The next day, the sky remained overcast. The three children walked nearly 3 kilometers, passing through affluent neighborhoods, where each house had tall iron gates and surveillance cameras. Each time Clara saw another family warm inside their cars, she gripped her siblings' hands tighter, keeping her head high. At the cemetery, the wind picked up. Mr. Gabriel, the elderly gatekeeper, recognized them right away. The gray-bearded man, wearing a thick coat and a knit cap, stepped forward and waved. "You kids again. Still walking here every time?" "We're used to it," Clara replied softly. Mr. Gabriel nodded, eyes filled with sympathy. "I heard from Mr. Matthew, your mother was a very strong woman. May God bless her." Amelia bowed her head in thanks, while Paul gave a slight nod and walked straight in. The wind lashed through the rows of graves, striking their faces, but none of them shielded themselves. They stopped in front of Laura's grave, the same mound of earth, the same stone marker, and a wilted purple flower Clara had brought from home. She gently laid the flower down, then knelt and whispered, "Mom, we've read your letter. We know everything. And today, I'm going to ask him. I'll ask him to his face." Paul knelt beside her, his voice firm. "I won't let him walk away as if nothing ever happened. But you'll be careful, right?" Amelia asked, trembling. "Mom was always afraid of him." Paul nodded slightly, his eyes still fixed on the headstone. "I just want him to see us. Really see us. The 3 children he's denied for 13 years. And then, fate struck. From afar, a sleek black car rolled through the cemetery gates, gliding over the stone path and stopping less than 20 meters from Laura's grave. The car door opened, and Charles Ramsey stepped out, holding a bouquet of white flowers. Clara froze. "It's him," she whispered. Amelia gripped her sister's hand tightly. "Why is he here?" Paul stood up abruptly, walking toward the man he had only seen in newspapers and on phone screens. Charles walked slowly, his face expressionless. He placed the white flowers on the grave, bowed his head slightly, then turned to leave, paying no attention to the 3 children standing just a few steps away. "Are you Charles Ramsey?" Clara called out, her voice trembling but clear. Charles paused. He turned, his eyes narrowing as he studied the 3 young faces. "Yes. I was acquainted with the deceased," he replied, adjusting the collar of his coat. "Sorry, I don't know who you are." Paul stepped forward. "We're her children." Charles frowned. "Children? We are Laura's children. Her biological children. Yours and hers." Silence fell. Only the wind could be heard. Charles blinked, then took a small step back, his gaze fixed on Paul, then Clara, then Amelia. He stared at them as if trying to verify their words, then let out a slight, almost contemptuous laugh. "She still didn't give that up, huh?" he muttered, then turned to face the 3 of them. "I don't know who you are. But I suggest you stop this." Clara trembled. "We're not here to ask for money. We just want you to acknowledge." Charles cut her off, his voice sharp. "Acknowledge what? A relationship that never existed? She was a maid. Then she disappeared. That's it. If she lied to you about your father, that's not my fault. You raped our mother." Paul roared. "We have her letter. Her journal. Evidence." Charles scoffed, unshaken. "Handwritten notes don't prove anything. The law doesn't side with feelings, kid." "You're a bastard," Clara said, her eyes blazing red. "Our mother died. She died never hearing an apology." Charles stepped closer to Clara, leaning down, his gaze cold as steel. "She's dead. Isn't she?" Then let the past rest. If you ever show up in front of me again, I'll sue you for defamation. You're really going to pretend for the rest of your life? Paul hissed. Charles looked at him, his face unreadable. I live in the present. I don't dwell in delusions. Then he turned and walked back to the car. He never looked back. His figure disappeared behind the car door, and the engine roared to life, a final slash to the hearts of the three children already cracking with pain. Amelia collapsed to the ground, burying her head as she sobbed. Mom! Mom! Clara dropped down beside the grave, slamming her hand against the headstone. He didn't cry. Not a single tear. Mom, he never loved you. He never accepted us. Paul stood still like a statue. His fists clenched so tight his palms began to bleed. From a distance, Mr. Gabriel came running, breathless. What happened? Clara turned, her face full of fury. He's the one who made our mom die a little more every day. And today, he came to lay flowers like he's innocent. Mr. Gabriel looked toward the car now disappearing beyond the gates. Was that Charles Ramsey? Yes, Paul nodded, voice hard as stone. It was him. And he just denied everything. The old man clenched his hands into fists, then slowly relaxed them. Life is cruel, child. But if you want to fight, you'd better be ready. Men like him, they don't fall easily. That afternoon, the three children sat in silence on the front steps of their apartment building, each of their faces heavy as stone. The rain had stopped, but none of them had the heart to look up. Amelia spoke softly. Maybe. Mom already knew he would deny it. But she still wrote the letter. Clara held her sister's hand, her eyes swollen. She wanted us to know the truth. So we wouldn't keep dreaming. Paul finally spoke, his voice low but firm. He can deny it. But the world won't. I won't stop. The next day, heavy rain poured over Washington. The wind whipped advertising banners along Constitution Avenue, drowning the city in a mournful, unrelenting howl like the cry of someone who couldn't stop grieving. Paul sat in a dark room, eyes locked on a portrait of his mother. He set the journal down on the table and clutched the suicide letter, now wrinkled from too many times unfolding and folding it again. I won't let him laugh at Mom's pain for even one more day, Paul muttered. Clara and Amelia stood beside him, worry in their eyes. Clara spoke quietly, we need to stay calm. What are you going to do? I'm going to his company. I'll make sure the whole corporation knows their CEO is a rapist who denied his own blood. Paul stood up and pulled a folder from his backpack, a set of documents he had prepared all night, copies of the handwritten letter, excerpts from his mother's diary, pictures of Laura when she was young, all neatly laminated. Amelia grabbed his sleeve, frightened. Don't go alone. Clara sighed. Aren't you afraid of what they'll do to you? He threatened Mom before. Paul's voice hardened. Mom stayed silent all her life. But I won't. That noon, Paul stood before the main entrance of Ramsey's headquarters, a towering glass building in the heart of Washington's financial district. Everyone walking past wore sharp suits, carried laptops, and talked on Bluetooth headsets. Paul, in his worn-out coat and youthful face, looked like a painful scratch across an otherwise polished painting. As he stepped through the revolving door, he was immediately blocked by a burly man in a security uniform, Mr. Richard. Hey kid. Where do you think you're going? The man barked. I need to see Charles Ramsey. It's urgent, Paul said, locking eyes with him. Richard squinted. Do you have an appointment? No. But I'm his son. And he needs to hear this. The guard let out a short laugh. Third person today claiming to be related to Mr. Ramsey. Go home. Paul raised the folder to eye level. This is evidence. A suicide letter from my mother, once a maid in his house. She was raped. Fired. And died of untreated illness. Richard frowned. Step back. Now. Paul didn't move. You want to throw me out? Call the police. But I'll scream right here in this lobby. I'll tell everyone who Charles Ramsey really is. People started glancing over. A woman stepped out from the reception desk, brown curly hair, name tag reading Lucy Martin, eyes filled with both curiosity and caution. What's going on, Mr. Richard? This kid wants to see Mr. Charles. Says he's his biological son, Richard muttered, cold-faced. Lucy looked at Paul, her expression softening slightly when she saw the fierce pain in his eyes. Do you have proof? She asked. Paul nodded and held up the documents. Lucy skimmed a few lines, her face paling. Is this handwriting from a woman named Laura? She asked quietly. Yes. My mother. She was raped by him when she worked as a maid. We're the result of that night. Now he denies everything. Lucy bit her lip. She knew her boss was strict, private. But this was a punch to the face with no warning. Wait here. I'll notify his secretary, she said, then hurried toward the elevator. Paul stood still, his eyes fixed on the honorary portrait titled Outstanding Entrepreneur, featuring Charles, hanging on the wall. A faint, bitter smile curled on his lips. Mom, do you see this? I'm doing what you couldn't. Meanwhile, Clara and Amelia stood 2 blocks away from the building, pacing with anxiety like ants on a hot pan. Clara walked back and forth, clutching her phone tightly. He hasn't called back. It's been over 30 minutes. Amelia whispered, what if they kicked him out? Clara bit her lip. Or threatened him. You know what that man is capable of. Back in the main lobby, Mr. Richard received a signal through his earpiece. He frowned slightly, then turned to Paul. Mr. Ramsey's secretary said he won't meet. But she requested the documents be sent up for review. If you won't leave them here, you'll have to go. Paul's voice was tight. No. Either he hears it from my own mouth, or I'll go outside and live stream everything. On TikTok, Instagram. I'll make him a public disgrace. Richard pointed a finger. Don't make a scene. This is a company, not your playground. Lucy stepped in, trying to de-escalate the tension. Mr. Richard, let him speak. Just for 1 minute. If nothing comes of it, I'll personally escort him out. Richard scowled but shrugged. Fine. 1 minute. Right here. Paul stood in the middle of the lobby, pulled out his phone, and turned on the camera. He started live streaming. Everyone, I'm Paul Ferguson. This is the headquarters of Ramsey Corporation. I am the son of Charles Ramsey, the man who raped my mother when she was working as his maid. This is her suicide letter, with his name written clearly. He rejected me, Clara, and Amelia, the children he created and threw away like trash. People in the lobby began murmuring, looking at each other. A few phones were pulled out. This is my mom's handwriting. These are photos. This is her journal. He lives in a mansion, goes on TV preaching morals, while my mom died of cancer in a room with no electricity, no hot water. Lucy's face turned pale. Richard tried to grab the phone, but Paul had already hit send. Now the whole world will know the truth, Paul said, his voice trembling. Get out of here, you little punk. Richard roared. Lucy stepped between them, shielding Paul. Don't touch him. Half an hour later, Paul returned to Clara and Amelia, his face cold and blank. Clara shouted, Are you crazy? You live-streamed? I sent it everywhere. News outlets, friends, human rights groups. He won't be able to sleep at night now. Amelia sobbed, What about school? Our classmates? They'll all know. Paul pulled them into a hug. I'd rather be mocked by the whole world than let Mom be forgotten like she never existed. On Monday morning, the three siblings walked through the school gates with heavy steps. The sky was still gray, and the wind had a sharp chill. But the atmosphere around them felt colder than the weather. Every glance, every whisper, every mocking laugh stabbed like needles into their skin. Clara gripped Amelia's hand as they passed a group of classmates gathered near the classroom. "Look, it's the three from that video," a high-pitched girl sneered. "Did you see it? The brother screaming about their dad, and the sister crying like she was possessed." Another chimed in, "Abandoned and live streaming for clout. What a show." Amelia lowered her head. Clara swallowed her tears and pulled her along. Paul was already standing in the courtyard, eyes straight ahead, ignoring the chatter. He looked like stone, prepared for the storm of judgment. But when he saw his sister on the verge of tears, he stepped forward, shielding them. "Say one more word and I'll break your damn jaw," Paul growled. "Ooh, look at that illegitimate son with a temper," a boy clapped mockingly. The bell rang, saving them, forcing the crowd to scatter. But the tension hung over the siblings like a dark cloud. The first class was math. Mr. Sebastian, their homeroom teacher and head of the department, walked in holding a file. He was a tall, gaunt man in his 50s, always wearing thick glasses and never smiling at students. "Let's begin with a talk," he said, placing the folder on his desk and looking straight to the back of the class, where the three siblings Saturday, Clara, Paul, Amelia. Report to the principal's office after this period. The class erupted in murmurs. "Silence," Mr. Sebastian snapped. "This is a school, not a tabloid." Paul stood abruptly. "A tabloid? You're calling the truth a scandal?" Mr. Sebastian removed his glasses and stared Paul down. "This is a school, not a courtroom. We don't care who your father is. But the video you posted has seriously damaged the school's image." Clara tried to explain, "We didn't mention the school. We only—" "That's enough," he cut her off. "You can explain everything to the principal later. For now, get your books out. If you can't focus on learning, you shouldn't be here." Amelia curled into herself, tears dripping onto her notebook. Clara placed her hand on hers and squeezed gently. During recess, the three were summoned to the principal's office, a bright room lined with award plaques but devoid of any warmth. The principal, Mrs. Mary Gordon, an older woman in a pearl necklace and conservative suit, sat behind her desk. Mr. Sebastian sat beside her. She began without preamble. "You know why you're here, don't you?" Clara nodded. "Because of my brother's live stream." She nodded. "That video is spreading online. And even though the school's name wasn't mentioned, people know you study here. Reporters have called. Parents are upset. Some have threatened to withdraw their children if we don't act." Paul stood. "We just spoke the truth. We didn't do anything wrong." Sebastian interjected, "That truth hasn't been verified. And using social media to attack someone is reckless. You're still young, we understand, but we can't let this continue affecting the school." Clara asked, voice shaking, "So, what does the school plan to do?" The principal hesitated for a moment, then said directly, "We're asking you to take a temporary leave." "Suspension?" Paul gritted his teeth. "No. A break. To avoid public pressure. And, to reflect on your actions." Amelia burst into tears. "But I didn't do anything." Clara tried to stay calm. "We can't take a break. Studying is the only way we can escape this life." The principal sighed. "We don't have a choice. This is pressure from the board. And from the parents of certain students. Charles's children," Paul said bitterly. "So now he's using money to shut down the school too." Mr. Sebastian tapped his pen on the desk. "That's enough, Paul. If you want to keep studying, you need to learn when to stay quiet." Clara's eyes burned. "My mother stayed quiet her whole life. She died alone. Now you want to silence her children too. The principal closed her eyes and sighed. I'm sorry. Please gather your things. That afternoon, the three returned to their apartment. The door felt heavier than usual. In the kitchen, the old aluminum pot bubbled on the stove, but no one had the appetite to eat. Amelia lay on the mattress, face buried in a pillow, sobbing. Paul sat against the wall, staring at a crack in the ceiling. Clara stood at the window, looking down at the empty street. A stray cat jumped over the fence and vanished. She wondered, if I were that cat, could I escape this life just as easily? A knock at the door. All three jumped. Clara went to open it. It was their upstairs neighbor, Mrs. Catherine, a grumpy widow standing with her hands on her hips and a sour expression. Just so you know, people are talking. Reporters came by yesterday asking weird questions. I don't want this building's name dragged through the mud because of 3 kids playing victims. Clara froze. What did you say? Don't play dumb. Your mom's dead, leave people alone. Digging up the past, playing the hero. Please. Paul's voice was tight. Our mom didn't want pity. She wanted recognition. Catherine scoffed. Recognition? She was a maid who got knocked up and now you're pointing fingers. Think making noise will get you a slice of the inheritance. Clara clenched her fists. We don't want money. We want the truth. Ha! Catherine sneered. Truth from the poor. Always the victims. I'm sick of it. She turned and climbed the stairs, her heels echoing like hammers pounding into the hearts of the 3 siblings. Amelia cried louder. Paul slammed his hand against the wall. Clara collapsed at the door, resting her head against the worn wood. No one spoke. Night fell. In the distance, the sound of car horns mixed with the 6 o'clock church bells. The 3 huddled together in the dark room, holding hands not because they were cold, but because they were scared. Scared of being forgotten. Scared the world would swallow up the truth. And most of all, scared that their mother, the woman who had lost everything, would never receive justice. The sky remained overcast, lifeless gray clouds drifting by, carrying with them a chill that pierced the bones. The 3 children sat quietly, staring at one another. Clara wrapped her arms around her siblings, unable to shake the bitterness inside her chest. Amelia still sobbed softly, her hiccuped breaths tangled with grief. Paul sat motionless, his eyes vacant. They had just endured a day filled with tension, rejection, and the cold indifference of adults. It was as if the world wanted to bury them in pain with no way out. What do we do next, Clara? Paul asked in a quiet voice. Is this enough? Do we even have the strength to keep going? Clara didn't answer right away. She looked out the window, where the last faint light of afternoon was slowly fading. We can't give up, Paul. Mom would never forgive us if we did. Paul looked at his sister, his eyes filled with determination. I know. But maybe, we need someone's help. The door to their room suddenly opened, and an elderly figure stepped inside. Clara jumped, but then recognized him, Mr. Raymond, the cemetery caretaker where their mother was laid to rest. Hello, children, Mr. Raymond said, his voice deep and slightly hoarse. Sorry to intrude. The 3 siblings looked at him in surprise, unsure why he was visiting at that moment. You knew our mother? Clara asked, skeptical. Mr. Raymond nodded. I knew your mother for over 10 years. She was a very strong woman, and I saw her many times sitting alone at the cemetery, speaking softly to her mother's grave. Amelia stared at him in amazement. Mom did that? Mr. Raymond sat down near them and pulled a small wooden box from his coat pocket, placing it on the table. She asked me to bury this with her after she passed. It's her final letter. Clara quickly opened the box and pulled out an old letter, its familiar handwriting instantly recognizable. Go ahead, open it, Mr. Raymond said softly, his eyes full of sorrow. These are your mother's final words. Clara unfolded the letter, her eyes fixed on every word. My beloved children. If one day you are reading this, I hope you understand that I lived for you, and I regret nothing. I never dared to act, because I always thought of you. But now, I hope you don't hate him. I chose to live in the shadows because I didn't want you to suffer. I didn't want you to seek him out, but if you must, I can't stop you. I only ask that you live with love and dignity, not like him. I love you, always. The letter slipped from Clara's hands, her eyes red with tears. She felt as if a great door had opened a way out of pain and silence. Mom. Mom wanted us to live differently from him. Paul sat down next to Clara, gripping her hand tightly. We won't make him pay by becoming like him. We'll live the way Mom wanted. Mr. Raymond sat quietly, witnessing the moment, then spoke gently. Don't worry too much. Charles won't get away with it. I have some information. I can help you. Clara looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. What do you know about him? He's a cruel man, but not everyone fears him. I know a few people in the press. If you're willing, I'll help you bring the truth to light. Paul looked at Mr. Raymond, his gaze unwavering. You'll help us? So we can bring justice for our mom? Mr. Raymond smiled a sad smile. I can't promise it will be easy, but I'll do all I can. An hour later, the three children left their apartment. Clara felt like she was stepping into a new path, no longer weighed down by fear and doubt. Things were beginning to change. And with that, a flicker of hope finally began to shine. They didn't speak as they walked, but this time, their steps were lighter. It was as if something inside had awakened a new beginning, and a quiet confidence beginning to take root. As the rain passed, weak rays of sunlight started to break through, as if nature itself was cheering them on in their fight. Mr. Raymond led them to a house far from downtown Washington, in a peaceful area, foreign, yet warm. It was the home of him and his wife, Mrs. Anna. When the door opened, an older woman with neatly tied silver hair and a gentle but strong face welcomed them. Hello, children. I'm Anna. Mr. Raymond has told me so much about you, she said warmly. Clara felt a wave of warmth sweep through her. She offered a weak smile and stepped inside, her heart slightly lighter. Mr. Raymond pointed to the chairs near the kitchen. Sit down. Anna's made dinner. You should rest a little. Dinner was simple but wholesome: chicken soup with fresh vegetables, some toasted bread, and cheese. The comforting aroma warmed Clara's heart. She looked at her siblings, seeing them eat with real appetite. Amelia took small spoonfuls of soup, her eyes still sad but brighter. Paul remained silent, his hands gripping the bowl of soup tightly, deep in thought. Thank you, sir, ma'am, Clara said softly. We don't know what we'd do without your help. Mr. Raymond sat across from them. You don't need to thank us. I'm doing this because I believe in the truth. And because your mother deserves to be acknowledged. If I don't act, people will keep living in lies. And that's unacceptable. Mrs. Anna sat beside him and offered a gentle smile. We live a simple life, but we are happy. And now, you have a home too. A family. Clara looked at her, then at Mr. Raymond. These weren't just words, this was something real. And maybe, just maybe, family didn't always mean blood. Sometimes, it meant the people who showed up when the world turned its back on you. Are we staying here? Amelia asked, her voice timid. Mr. Raymond nodded, eyes kind. Of course. You won't have to worry about where to sleep or what to eat anymore. And I've spoken to a lawyer. We'll help apply for legal guardianship. Paul stood, his eyes distant. But he won't give up so easily. Charles will try to stop us. We'll fight, Mrs. Anna said firmly. Not just for you, but for what your mother endured. We'll do everything we can to make the truth known. Clara looked at the two adults, feeling as though the missing pieces of her life were finally falling into place. She turned to Paul. Mom would smile if she saw we're finally safe and loved. Paul didn't speak, but the cold, hardened look on his face was gone. He held Clara's hand and lowered his head, trying to hold back the wave of emotion. The next day, the children didn't return to school. Instead, Mr. Raymond and Mrs. Anna introduced them to a skilled lawyer, Mr. Daniel Rogers, who specialized in family rights and abuse cases. "We're taking this to court," Daniel said as he met with the three. "Your mother suffered far too long. And silence has lasted long enough." Paul, Clara, and Amelia sat in his office, knowing they were about to enter a battle not just for their mother, but to tear down the wall protecting Charles Ramsey and the false world he had built. 2 weeks later, an official investigation began. Reporters from major news networks began covering the case, and the story of Charles Ramsey gradually emerged into the public eye. Former workers from the Ramsey household, people who had witnessed his behavior, started coming forward. Old photos of Laura when she was a maid in his house appeared in the press. And then, one day, Charles Ramsey, once untouchable, was forced to face the truth. During a live television interview, he no longer wore his signature smug smile. His face had gone pale as reporters began asking about his past, about what he did to Laura. "Can you respond to the accusations made by the 3 children?" a reporter asked. Charles pressed his lips together, eyes visibly unsettled. "I don't know anything about that. It's from long ago. A misunderstanding. I fired her a long time ago." But no one believed him anymore. The evidence, the testimonies, and the witnesses had already stripped away his mask. The 3 children sat in front of the TV, watching Charles Ramsey squirm during the live interview. Every word he said felt like a blade. But this time, they didn't flinch. They had support. They had people who cared. And most of all, they had the truth. "We're going to win, right?" Amelia asked, looking at Clara. Clara nodded. "Absolutely. Mom will be acknowledged. And will never be denied again." A month later, the court ruled that Charles Ramsey was liable for the damages he had caused and granted legal guardianship of the 3 children to Mrs. Anna and Mr. Raymond. That day, as the ruling was read aloud, the 3 siblings stood on the courthouse steps, no longer burdened. They had won. That evening, Clara, Paul, and Amelia sat together in the cozy living room of Mr. Raymond's home. Everything had changed. "Mom, we did it," Clara whispered, looking up at Laura's photo on the wall. Paul held his siblings' hands. "We have a family now." Amelia smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. "We're not alone anymore." And that's when they realized, even when the world turns its back on you, truth and love remain, and they will help you rise again, no matter how many times you fall. This story highlights the power of truth and justice. No matter how hard life gets, no matter how abandoned or denied we feel, we must never give up fighting for what's right. Silence only deepens the pain. But when we rise and demand justice, we can change our fate. Love and dignity are the compass that guide us through even the darkest times.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.